Some betrayals don't come with knives. They come with contracts, smiles, and a kiss before breakfast. I was 35, an architect who spent more time designing buildings than figuring out people. I thought if you built something strong, love, trust, a life together, it would hold, like steel, like stone. But it turns out, some of the most dangerous structures are the ones you don't see until they collapse. Her name was Sienna. For 7 years, I thought she was my partner in everything. We built a life, a company, a future. Then, one day, she handed me a prenup, and I started noticing the cracks. What followed wasn't rage. It wasn't revenge. It was silence, strategy, and truth. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is no longer believing the lie. I used to believe that loyalty could outlast time, that if you stood by someone long enough, weathered enough storms together, you'd earn something sacred. 7 years with Sienna taught me otherwise. We met in a conference hall, the kind where dreams get pitched and egos inflate like helium balloons. I was the closing speaker that day, an architect barely known beyond city limits, speaking about sustainable urban design and community-integrated living. She approached me after the panel, confident, sharp, gorgeous in a way that wasn't just visual. It was strategic. Her questions were specific, targeted. "You think structure can fix broken neighborhoods?" she asked. I answered with something clever, I'm sure. But what I remember most was how her eyes locked onto mine, like she was already seeing 10 steps ahead. It didn't take long before she became part of everything. My life, my work, my routines. Sienna didn't just support me, she elevated me. She knew how to pitch my ideas better than I did. She cleaned up my rough edges for investors, shaped my voice in interviews, and made connections in places I couldn't even pronounce. We grew together. At least, that's what I told myself. Looking back, I should have paid more attention to the precision in her compliments, the way she never let a moment go unleveraged. But when you're climbing, and someone's pushing you higher, you don't stop to check if they're building a ladder or a trap. By year 3, we were living in a minimalist apartment overlooking the river, a blend of steel and glass that reflected exactly who we were, transparent from the outside, but cold to the touch. My firm had finally landed public contracts, and her PR work had expanded into the nonprofit sector. We were a power couple, or so the press releases said. Then came the ring, or rather, the idea of the ring. I never officially proposed. We just evolved into it. She picked the venue. I picked the architect. We both picked a date that didn't clash with board meetings. Love was assumed, but never really discussed. 1 month before the wedding, she handed me a folder over breakfast. "Prenup," she said casually, sipping her black coffee. "Standard stuff. I've worked too hard to not protect my assets, you understand." I smiled, nodded, said I did. But a quiet chill settled behind my ribs and stayed there for days. We'd always talked about building a life together, but suddenly it felt like she was building something else. Something with fire exits and liability clauses. Still, I signed. Because that's what you do when you've invested 7 years into someone. You trust. Even when something inside you starts whispering, "Look closer." That whisper turned into a scream the day I opened her iPad by accident. We were ring shopping, and I needed to double-check a design. Her mail app was open. A notification pinged. Normally, I would have looked away. This time, I didn't. There it was, a Wells Fargo statement, a personal account in her name only. Almost 200 grand sitting idle. I'd never seen it, never heard of it. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself not to spiral. But architects don't just see buildings. We see patterns. We see flaws in symmetry. And something about this didn't align. So I did what I never imagined I'd do to someone I loved. I started digging. Not out of spite, out of self-preservation. And what I uncovered, it was only the beginning. I didn't sleep much that night. Sleep felt dishonest, like closing my eyes would be the same as pretending everything was fine. And things weren't fine. Not when there was a six-figure account I'd never heard of, quietly sitting in her name, outside of everything we'd built together. I started small, simple searches, cross-referencing account numbers from the email with publicly available data. The transactions were regular, clean, too clean, like someone trying to make messiness look elegant. Each month, a fixed amount went out, not rounded but deliberate. 40 sour, not a bill, not a loan, a payment. But to whom? The recipient name was abbreviated, ML. That's all. No context, no vendor history. It took a few hours before it hit me like a slow, rising tide. Miles. I hadn't thought about him in years. Not since that art gala at the Metropolitan Arts Pavilion. One of those evenings where people wear uncomfortable shoes to pretend they care about abstract sculptures and overpriced light fixtures. Sienna insisted we go, said it would elevate our image among creative investors. I spent most of the night trying to decode neon blobs hung on bare walls. That's where I saw her talking to him. A tall man with careless hair, mismatched buttons, and a smirk like he knew something you didn't. I didn't catch the name then, but I remembered the way she laughed. Too long, too freely. When I asked her about him afterward, she waved it off. An artist I used to know, eccentric but harmless. Harmless, right. Now, here I was, connecting dots between her forgotten artist and a 5-figure monthly transaction. I checked the gallery's website. Buried in their past event listings, Miles Lawton, experimental revivalist. One image caught my breath. The two of them in a crowd, her hand resting on his chest. I never saw it before. Maybe because I never looked. I knew better than to confront her. Not yet. Not without proof. Architects don't demolish without studying the load-bearing walls. You plan. You document. You brace for the collapse. So I kept digging. I pulled archived business records, scraped through old emails, synced timestamps, matched signatures. And slowly, the outlines of something bigger began to form. This wasn't just a fling. This was a network, a structure. And Sienna? She wasn't just lying to me, she was using me. I called Lucas, the one person I trusted who knew how to see through numbers the way I saw through concrete and steel. We met back in grad school. I went into architecture. He became a forensic accountant for high-profile fraud cases. We hadn't talked in years, but when I messaged him a single sentence, "Need help," quietly, he replied in 5 minutes, "Send everything." I gave him access to the screenshots, the banking trail, the company names tied to the transfers. He didn't ask questions at first, just analyzed. The next night, we met at a downtown bar so dimly lit, it felt like a confession booth. "She's laundering the money," he said plainly, pushing his laptop toward me. "Or at least she's routing it through multiple shells to keep it invisible." My throat tightened. "Through who?" "She's got a Delaware LLC under the name Ardent Labs. No website, no press. But the EIN links back to a P.O. box in Brooklyn, registered to an M. Lawton. That ring a bell?" I swallowed hard. "She's using Ardent to invest in another shell, which Miles operates under the name Elk Theory. Some kind of art meets tech nonsense. It's built to collapse. He'll burn it down the moment the IRS looks his way." Lucas's eyes narrowed. "And Nathan? They used your name on the pitch deck for early angel investors." I stared at the screen. There it was. My credentials. My photo. Architectural advisor. I never signed anything, never even heard of the damn company. "She's selling your reputation to legitimize his scam. You're the credibility. The reason people cut checks." The air felt thick. I leaned back, not sure if I was going to laugh or put my fist through the table. I'd given this woman my loyalty, my time, my silence. And she'd made me a pawn in a tax fraud game I didn't even know I was playing. I didn't tell Lucas everything, not yet. Not about the prenup, not about the wedding guests already RSVPing. But I told him enough. That there was a line I hadn't crossed yet. That I needed proof, documentation, everything that could hold up in court or under federal review. He nodded once. I'll build you a wall of evidence, quiet and airtight. For the next 2 weeks, we worked like ghosts. I'd go to the office, attend client calls, pretend I was another man in love counting down to his big day. At night, I combed through financial statements, contracts, any document Sienna ever sent from our shared drives. Lucas traced burner emails, offshore connections, patterns in the timing of transactions. It was like watching someone dig their own grave, methodically, confidently, not realizing the dirt was piling up above them. And through it all, Sienna smiled like nothing was wrong. She still kissed me on the cheek when I left for work, still made little notes about honeymoon options, asked about tux fittings, complimented my tie. She was perfect, charming, thoughtful. She was a professional. I started documenting everything, every conversation, every smile that didn't reach her eyes. I backed up files, printed redundancies, hid them in places she wouldn't think to look, inside blueprints of projects she never understood, filed under zoning applications. She didn't suspect a thing. She had spent years building a role. The loyal fiancé, the brilliant partner, the woman behind the man. But I wasn't the man she thought I was. And she had no idea the foundation was already cracking beneath her feet. I spent years drafting blueprints that shaped skylines. But none of them compared to the plan I was drawing now. A quiet architecture of collapse, designed not with steel or glass, but with silence and precision. The first move was legal, the prenup. She thought I'd signed and filed it. I hadn't. Instead, I revised it subtly, surgically. With Lucas's help, I inserted clauses that restructured financial ownership, redefined joint assets, and removed her entitlement to any shares of my company in the event of fraud or ethical breach. The final page bore her digital signature, captured during an early draft when she previewed the document. She never checked what changed. She trusted the facade. That's the thing about architects. We hide our work behind beauty. Next came the finances. Our joint account wasn't massive. Just household expenses, ring payments, the venue deposit. I froze it, quietly. I rerouted every automatic payment and changed passwords on shared services. No email alerts, no bouncing transactions, just silence. She wouldn't even notice until she needed to notice. Then, the strikes began. 2 manila folders. One labeled Internal Revenue Service. The other, Private Equity Disclosure, Urgent. Inside, timelines, transaction summaries, pitch decks, and digital communication logs, all tied to Sienna and Miles. One went to the IRS's Anonymous Fraud Division, the other to 2 investment firms who'd recently praised Elk Theory as a breakthrough creative platform. I didn't call, didn't text, no dramatics, just mailed truth. Every step I took felt both heavy and clean, not vengeful, surgical. There's a difference between justice and retaliation. I wasn't looking to destroy her. I was looking to remove her from my future. Still, I won't pretend I wasn't haunted. At night, I'd lie awake next to her back warm, her breath even, and wonder who the hell I was sleeping beside. The same woman who once stayed up 3 nights editing my TEDx talk? Who cried when my father died? Or had that always been part of the act? One morning, she handed me a menu for the caterer. Her eyes sparkled, lips curved like we were 16 and planning prom. "I was thinking we should add a late-night espresso bar," she said. "Just a little touch of class." I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt pity. Because she thought the wedding was still happening. She didn't know the walls were already closing in. That everything she thought she controlled was slipping through her manicured fingers. That the man sitting across from her wasn't choosing flowers anymore. He was choosing truth. I smiled. "Sounds perfect," I said. And in that moment, it was. 3 months later, New York had shed its autumn gold for winter steel. The sidewalks glittered with frost. The air held that familiar edge of coming snow, and I walked the city like a man who had left something behind without regret. The fallout came fast, like it always does when the story is too good to ignore. A week after the engagement party, Ardent Labs and Elk Theory were both frozen under preliminary fraud investigations. The IRS confirmed that multiple shell companies had been linked to evasive practices, laundered money disguised as creative investments, with falsified advisory affiliations. My name, once attached to those companies, had already been removed. I made sure of that. Sienna was subpoenaed. So was Miles. He tried to vanish, as parasites do. But one can't disappear from a digital trail. Especially not when they've filed contracts with forged signatures and passed them off as collaborative endorsements. I didn't follow the headlines, but people sent them to me anyway. Artist-mogul duo under investigation for tax fraud. From power couple to PR catastrophe. Even the tech blogs got involved. Apparently, one of the investment firms I'd warned was preparing a civil suit. I said nothing publicly. No interviews. No veiled posts. No retribution masked as morality. That wasn't what this was about. I wasn't interested in watching her fall. I was interested in rising without her. I heard through Lucas that Sienna tried to claim ignorance, that she spun it as being manipulated by a former lover, someone who took advantage of her trust and ambition. But the evidence said otherwise. Her emails didn't sound like a victim. They sounded like a partner in crime. And so, the doors closed. Her consulting firm lost every client within 2 weeks. Her social media went silent. A joint statement from her former investors confirmed they would pursue restitution for all damages caused by fraudulent misrepresentation. As for Miles, he pled out, fined, barred from conducting business in any financial capacity for the next 10 years. He avoided jail, but not disgrace. Meanwhile, I kept building. My firm thrived, clients stayed. Some even respected me more for how I'd protected my work, my ethics, my name. One client told me, "Most people either explode or disappear. You rebuilt. That says something." I didn't respond. I just nodded. Because I wasn't trying to say something. I was just trying to live in a way that didn't require asterisks. Then, one afternoon, I visited a design school in Brooklyn where I sometimes mentored students. There was a young guy there, Alejandro. Brilliant, broke, passionate about sustainable design, but working night shifts just to afford textbooks. I remembered being him. And I remembered the shares I now owned in Elk Theory, the shell company Miles built on lies. I didn't want them. They meant nothing to me. But to Alejandro, they could mean a beginning. So I transferred them, legally, fully, no strings. "You're giving me equity?" he asked, stunned. "I'm giving you a second chance," I said. "Just make sure it's honest." He nodded, teary-eyed. And as I walked away from that school, something settled in me. Something I hadn't felt in years. Not revenge, not justice. Something better. Closure. Some nights I still wake up and forget for a second that I'm alone. That there's no silk dress on the bathroom door. No espresso machine humming at dawn. No voice asking about the morning traffic or my next project review. But it's not loneliness that greets me. It's clarity. Because there's a silence that doesn't echo pain. It just breathes. The world didn't change after Sienna. It kept moving, relentlessly ordinary. Emails, deadlines, coffee shops with names I forget. But I changed. Not in the way people expect, scarred, jaded, cynical. No. I became deliberate. I started saying no to things I used to accept just to keep peace. I started asking harder questions. I redesigned my office, removed the glass desk she once picked, replaced it with a solid walnut slab I built myself. Nothing showy, just honest, functional, mine. I don't hate her. That surprises people. Hate requires energy, and I'd rather spend that building something that won't collapse the first time someone knocks on it too hard. Do I regret loving her? No, I regret not listening to myself sooner. Because the truth was always there. In the way she handled small lies like rehearsal. In the way her praise always had a shelf life. In the way I started apologizing for instincts that tried to protect me. But I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm just awake. And if that's what betrayal gave me, then maybe it wasn't just destruction. Maybe it was an unveiling. A cracking open of walls too carefully decorated. They say architecture is the art of understanding space. Maybe the hardest blueprint to draw is the one around your own boundaries. The one that says, here is where I end. Here is where I will not be reshaped. If anyone's listening to this, anyone who's ever doubted their gut for the sake of love, or let silence become survival, know this: truth is loud, even when whispered. And dignity isn't something you reclaim. It's something you never give away.